Hello everyone, welcome. This is Desi Vijay. I'm a NorthSouth national team member and a coordinator for webinars. After pausing for summer and nationals, we are starting our fall-winter season webinars today. Glad to see you all here today and hope you're all doing great. Today we are bringing you an important topic about helping our Gen Z kids assimilate in this society. This is a part of our ongoing topic, bridging the generation gap, which is very near and dear to us. And this is the 5th session of that series. You can watch the previous sessions recorded at our NorthSouth YouTube channel. Please watch it there. We are really pleased to have an expert in this field to talk to you, share our professional experience, and then answer your questions. She is also a very active participant of our Bridging the Gap team, and I'm really glad we are able to make this happen today. Welcome to yet another exciting webinar. We have a webinar session today on cultural assimilation, growing up Indian in America. We have very accomplished professional here to talk to us and guide us through this very sensitive topic. It gives me the great pleasure to welcome Dr. Unnati Jain as a presenter of the session today. She is a doctorate in leadership and change from Walden University, USA, with a focus on behavioral characteristics of Gen Z and Millennials. She also has a master's degree in knowledge management from Kent State University in Ohio and a master's degree in philosophy from Walden University, Minneapolis. She's also a yoga and a meditation instructor and uses self-reflection techniques to bridge the communication. We are really glad to have her here today. And like I said, she's a contributor for our Building the Generation Gap team. So we are really glad to have her here to join us and then share her wisdom with us. So here you are, Dr. Unnati Jain. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Desi. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Very honored to be here and share my knowledge with you, which I've gathered over the years, and with the hope that in the next 45 minutes, we will be able to learn a few things from each other. I encourage everybody to make the session very interactive. Please post your questions in the chat. We'll try and keep the presentation as in a monologue. There shouldn't be a monologue, but in the beginning 45 minutes, we'll keep it to the presentation. And then after 45 minutes of that, then we will take questions on the chat. So please feel free to post your questions on the chat as we go along. So moving on to our, of course, if you are, let me just get this right, sorry. Okay, I'm not presuming that everybody here is Indian. There could be other people also. So I'm just, so that's why this question is here is that if you're American, let me set the stage before that. If your child is behaving in a particular way and not adopting to your Indian values, there is a reason behind it. And we're going to unpack the various reasons as we go along through this presentation. And then we will come on to the solutions. But it's imperative to understand what a child is going through, including what a parent is going through it also. So we will talk about both children and parent. And as you saw, the topic of this presentation is really bridging the generational divide. So let's just, at the beginning of the presentation that I'd like to say is, neither is your child wrong and nor is the parent wrong. It's just a different change in perspective, which both the parties need to take to bridge this generational divide, which we so struggle with, because we're an Indian parent and we're living in a country which is where our values are not so prevalent. So there is a reason behind why your child is behaving the way your child is behaving. And of course, like every Indian parent, our parenting ideology is normally quite clear, where we say we want our child rooted in Indian values while preparing him to be a global citizen living in the United States. And we've made so many sacrifices for our children. Of course, the Indian community is one community that does not put anybody above their children. We all know that. We do anything for our child. And when we see that our child is not willing to accept all of those sacrifices, and it does not recognize those sacrifices, and they greatly identify themselves more with the American people that they're moving along with, rather than inculcating the Indian values that we're trying to instill in them, we're in a state of shock. And that's very natural. So you're all in a good place. We're all doing something very normal. You're not an anomaly, and neither is your child. Let's just get into a little bit of, I'm not going to read out the numbers for you as you can see it on the screen, but we do want to understand that the United States, it's called the melting pot for a reason, and it has many cultures, along with, of course, the Indian culture. And this is just a breakdown of the culture that, of the many cultures that we have in the United States. Now, just for the sake of this presentation, let me just identify who Generation Z are. We've been talking about Generation Z. These are children that are born after 1995, between 1995 to 2010. Some researchers take it as 97, some researchers take it as 95. Give and take 3 to 4 years. It's normally between 1995 to 2010. And the oldest of the Generation Z, which we call, is now 25 years of age. So just to keep that in perspective. Now let's go back to understanding this generation a little bit. What have they seen in the past 10 years that they've been growing up since 1995? We agree that they came into a world where their world started with the phone, their world started with the internet. Back in 1995, if you remember, internet was just starting up, and when these children opened their eyes, they had phones in their hands. And they've seen stuff like Black Lives Matter, they've seen climate change, they've seen the war, they've seen pandemic, they've seen a black president. They've seen a whole lot of things which a lot of our generations has not seen. Of course, we've seen different things, but these kids, they have grown up and they've seen some of these, the world completely changing, the rise of a shared economy where all of the Airbnbs came up, the crowdsourcing, the 2008 financial crisis. So they have seen a lot in the past, ever since they've been growing up, which makes them a very confused generation. Now, they have access to a whole lot of technologies and perks, which we didn't have in our own age, right? We didn't get the phone that easy. We didn't get the iPad that easy. We used to have 3 channels on TV or 4 channels of TV. If you remember, back in India, you would have the Doordarshan and the Chitrahar and, all of these things coming in, one movie on a Sunday, whereas these kids, everything is at their fingertips. So we're dealing with a generation which has got their resources pretty handy, but at the same time, they're also fighting against the fast exhausting resources that's happening on the planet, such as climate change, such as the other things that are taking their individuality away, such as all the wars that are happening around them, the pandemic that's happening around them. So if it's hard for you, it's equally harder for them. I think this is the first thing that we need to realize, that none of you are alone. Neither is the parent wrong and nor is the child wrong. It's just a different perspective. So who are we? We are an organization that coaches Indian American children by inculcating Indian values just through a change in perspective. We work with tweens, teens, and parents to help them bridge the emotional and the behavioral issues, bridging the generational divide, because we're of strong belief that behind every action, there is an emotion. If your child is behaving in a particular way, whether that's sitting on the screen 24/7 or not communicating with you, or going out and talking only to their friends, or having social anxiety, or not communicating with their friends and sitting in a closed room, there is an emotion behind every action. And what we do is we help parents and children identify that emotion by identifying because I have studied the behavioral aspects of this generation. I use research formulas to understand what your child is going through and why is your child behaving the way they're behaving. So that's the founder. I'm the founder. I'm Dr. Unnati Jain, an Indian teen and parent life coach. I coach young adults, tweens, and teens. And my expertise and specialty lies in bridging the generational divide between a parent and a child and bringing the relationship closer just through a change in perspective. Now, let's just, with all of this, I'm sure this is a little bit overwhelming for you, but the good news is that you're not alone on this ship. In the last 22 years, we've had all sorts of beautiful cultures which have migrated to the United States to call this country our home. We started with 1,900,000 back in 2000. We're at 6 million at this point, 6 million and change. And that was back in 2020, the numbers that you're looking at. But in 2022, I'm sure we've driven a few more numbers by now. So that's why America is called the melting pot of cultural diversity. We are just one culture. They have many more cultures like that. But it's not only different people migrating, right? It's different generations. So when we're looking at 6 million or 8 million of us Indians migrating to the United States, it's a whole lot of generations, the baby boomers there, and we've listed the years in which all of these generations were born. So, and we have to remember that all of these generations are migrating to the United States, and they're all programmed differently. Our age, our era, our environment, which forms our current responses, which is how we behave, is completely different. So our behaviors chart out our future, whereas their behavioral elements are completely different. So they're charting out a completely different behavior. So how is it that we are going to help them, support them in taking all of those the wonderful Indian values that we have? I think there is no other culture in the world that has such rich Indian heritage and such rich Indian values. How are we going to take those rich Indian values, inculcate them into our children, and make them into global citizens standing confidently while adopting their own values, but also looking at world without a boundary, kind of expanding their world, but standing confident with their values. So that's a challenge that we all have to take together. Now let's look at the US population by generation, and this is just to give you an idea. This is all in millions. So we're looking at all of this US population in by generation, just to give you an idea of how many boomers, how many seniors, children. Millennials is Gen X, is I think between 1945 and 1975. Then we have millennials. Millennials are really today's parents of Gen Z, so the generation born before Gen Z. So I think millennials is between 1981 to 1995, give and take. So this is just giving you an idea of the US population by generation. Now let's talk about the social realities of your child. And we, at the beginning, we conducted a poll and we said it was, we had parents starting from 10 to 14. We got about, I think, 58%, and we got 15 to 18 of 38% or something like that. And I'm sure more people have joined now. But these are the social realities of your Indian American kid. We want our children to take Indian food to work, Indian food to school, and we tell them, why are you shy of your Indian food? I mean, this is ridiculous. Why can't you just take wraps? Why can't you just take rasam and chawal? Why can't you just take, paneer and roti and take your Indian food? Why are you ashamed of it? Because when they go to school and they open their lunchbox, they turn around and the American kids or any other ethnicity turns around and says, don't bring it to school. Your Indian food smells. People have put Indians in a box where they say, your dad works at a gas station or an IT firm. They just, when they look at you, the first thing that they ask you, are you in IT? Because that's how their minds are programmed. Then they'll turn around and say, why can't you understand American expressions? Or your accent is funny. When they hear all of these social stereotypes that are echoed in their social circles, it's very damaging. It's very damaging to their personality. It's very damaging to their emotional well-being. They come back with all of this. And what happens when they come back with all of this? They get extremely frustrated and they want to culturally detach from you. Racism kicks in. Children start to rely on impulsive. They get aggressive. They want to look at you and saying, why are you doing this to me? Because they hold you responsible for all of the things that people are saying to them. They start reacting. They become very reactive. They don't understand the consequences of their actions, and that is beginning from 11. I mean, I know we have parents from 10 to 14. It actually begins when puberty hits, or puberty nowadays puberty hits a little bit early. So I have to say it starts beginning from maybe about 11. And of course, it's in full swing by the time it kicks into 13, where they can't manage their hormones. They're detaching from their culture. They're hearing all of these things in school. So they're becoming aggressive, and all of these things that are coming into their minds, apart from the fact that their hormones are all over the place, they become super aggressive. So this is why they go through the cultural detachment. So now that we've established the why, it's important to ask yourself what's happening. If these are the things that your teen or your preteen or your tween is doing, then you're in the right place. Do they prefer to daydream instead of making conversations with you? They turn around and tell you, you don't understand me. You don't get me. Nobody understands me. Their patience is running low. They get aggressive. They run to their friends. They like to make friends who are probably sometimes what you think are not good for them. They like to hang out with people who are defiant. So if all of these things are happening to you, then you're in the right place. Now, you are the security blanket. The good news in all of these bad news is you are the security blanket wrapped around your child. But the generational holes, the generational difference is creating holes in it. So if anybody in the world can fix this, it is you. So don't give up hope. You are the only person in the world who knows your child the best. And you are the only person in the world who can fix this. And we can only with a shift in perspective. That's all we need. Believe it or not, as much as we all believe that um, our child only wants to connect on social media. Our child doesn't want to talk. Our child does not want to be in a social setting, or a child does not want to meet people. They're craving a sense of belonging. This is a generation, as per research, this is a generation which craves face-to-facial interaction because they have grown up with the internet ever since they were born. They crave face-to-face interaction. And when they crave face-to-face interaction, they actually crave for one-on-one relationships. They do beautifully well with one-on-one relationship, to the extent that they have said that even when the research says that when these kids are going into the outside world, into the corporate world, if they get attentions from their bosses, they actually do much better because they haven't received that one-on-one interaction with the world. So how can we maintain a balance between a dual environment, your Indian home dipped in Indian values, their exposure to the multifaceted cultural environment that they're seeing outside? So whenever I'm presented with this question, where are you from? There's always a dilemma. And I think an Indian American faces a plethora of stereotypes. Do you eat curry at home? Have you ever heard you eat curry every night? Or you go to yoga in the morning and they turn around and say, oh my God, you smell of curry. Do your parents speak English? Is your marriage going to be arranged? Is a very famous one. Like, especially with the Indian matchmaking coming on Netflix, I think these are very pertinent questions that are asked. But what do these questions do? They seem like harmless questions, but they actually create an identity crisis in your child. So when I see relationships falling apart, I see broken communications. I think maximum, as everybody pointed out in the poll that we just conducted, that broken communication, that we failed to communicate with our teenagers. That is why, to uncomplicate teenage and rebuild relationships, which is why Gen Z and you were born. So Gen Z, let me just break that. Gen Z is, of course, Generation Z, and you is you. The letter word you is you. And you and Gen Z together, we can come together to bridge that generational divide. And that's why I am here, to help you and support you with that. How do we help? So we are shaped by experiences we live through. Everything stems from emotions, as we all pointed out, that behind every action there is an emotion. What we do is we help them with self-discovery. Often we don't know, and I think it's very important to understand here. A lot of parents think this is a mental health issue. No, this is not a mental health issue. There is a wide difference between a therapist and a life coach. And I think it's imperative to understand, because a lot of parents don't come forward speaking about what's going on with their child because they think it's a mental health issue. No, it's a life coach issue. So let me explain the difference between life coach and a therapist, and I'll do my best. And you can post additional questions on the chat. What does a life coach do? We compassionately identify your child's behavioral patterns. We empower them to overcome their weaknesses and capitalize on their strengths. What does a therapist do? A therapist goes to the past. A life coach looks to the future. We have action-driven approaches. We focus on the future. We give you practical solutions to overcome your current barriers. And these will all be structured sessions where the child will get to understand themselves And all these things that you hear, I love, you don't understand me, you don't get me, mom and dad. Our challenge is to change it with, I love you, mom and dad. I want to be your best friend. So that's our challenge. So we exist to revive those connections. Now let's get into some of the solutions. Now that we've considered, we've laid the land a little bit, and we all understand where the children coming from and where are the parents coming from. It's important to understand how can we get a change in perspective. Let me just do a quick check on time. Okay, we have 15 minutes. So the first thing, I think, prioritizing communication. Let me just move this. Prioritizing communication is very important. In our days, when we were growing up, and I would imagine a lot of the people here are Gen X, people like me, or millennials maybe, but mostly would be Gen X. Either or, when we were growing up, we were not given any explanations. We were not given reasoning. We were not given choices. We were told what to do. And what that did to us was somewhere, and I don't know, and maybe a lot of you don't agree with me, but here is just my take. What that did to us somewhere was it stunted our growth. We weren't allowed to say no, for instance. Now, here is my question to everybody, and please feel free to challenge me on this one. When we weren't allowed to say no because no was considered disrespectful in our culture, what does that do to us? Your home is your safest place, and when we are not allowed to say no at home, that trains our mind that we're just not allowed to say no. Saying no is disrespectful. And what that do to us? It took us into the outside world, into the corporate world, or anywhere else where Indians are set to take the maximum load. Why? Because they don't want to say no. Right? So I think with every teenager, every growing up child, whether that's 11 or that's 18 or that's 25 or that's 35, I think everybody needs to be treated with respect. They deserve to be given explanations. For that, we have to step down from a pedestal of a parent. We have to come down to their level. We have to understand that those were the days when we did not need explanations. Today's children, if you rationalize with them, if you give them a task, or if you want them to do something and you tell them the reasoning behind it, they are a lot more willing to accept the change versus do because I said so. For instance, I'll give you an example, and I wrote that down just because it came to me, and I didn't want to let go of it. I think there was a child who came and said to our a child who came home, an American child came home to an Indian household and turned around and said, "Oh my God, you have so many people at home. How do you manage your home is so crowded?" And the child was given such good values and explained so well that the child turned around and said, "Look, I have my grandparents here who have the hand on my head, who are there when my parents need help, who give me a hug when I'm down and out. And my parents are here, they tuck me in at night. So I feel loved all of the time. So this doesn't seem to me like a crowd, but it seems to me with people giving a lot of love at home." So I think these are the kind of stories and the rationalization that we need to give to our children. We need to prioritize communication with them. We often get so caught up in our lives that we forget to give explanations to our children. And moreover, sometimes we don't want to give explanations to our children. We're just too busy doing our own things. So I think the first thing we need to bridge the generational divide is to take your child as a human and say, okay, I'm going to rationalize with them instead of just telling them what to do. Boosting self-esteem. I think a lot of children struggle with low self-esteem, as we saw in the poll today. Remember, your tone of voice, your body language, your every expression counts. Praising is a huge thing to boost your child's self-esteem, but praise has to be very specific. If we praise a child by saying, "Oh my God, you're wonderful. You're amazingly good looking. You're wonderful. You're brilliant," it doesn't do anything except it makes them egotistical. So if we narrow down the praise, that'll be so. If we pick a particular incident, for instance, if they've done let's say you've given them chores or you've asked them to empty the dishwasher out yesterday, And they did it, and you turn around and they haven't been doing it all of these days. If you narrow that down and say, thank you for emptying out the dishwasher, that was really nice of you. I know you've been struggling to do it for the past 10 days, but thank you, it was great of you to do it. So you need to narrow down your praise. They've done well in their SAT, let's say. For all these are all for the 15 and 18 years who are going through their SATs. They do well in their SAT, or they're studying a lot. Then you have to narrow down the praise and say, okay, not that you're brilliant and you're studying very hard, but I like the fact, instead of saying that, I like the fact that you're putting in 2 hours towards your SAT, apart from the homework that you've been giving through to school. So that'll help you do your SAT better. So what you have just done is you've narrowed down the praise. You have identified one particular thing, so the child at any given point in time knows that you're listening and you're watching and you are carefully identifying their strengths. So that's another way of boosting your self-esteem. Your body language. I mean, often when we don't like something from children, we cross our hands and we stand, or we roll our eyes when we don't like something, or some of their friends or anything like that. It's very hard as a parent, but the more poker expression you have on your face, the better. The easy body language that you have, the more you will get your child to respond. Your every expression counts. Your tone of voice, I think it's very important, because a child knows when you're talking down to them. A child knows when you are rationalizing with them, when you're angry. Just like you know your child very well, your child knows you better, and your child knows how to manipulate you, like everybody, right? I don't think we can blame our children for manipulating our children, because at some point in time we all have manipulated our parents. We all do it, right? So just to keep that in mind. Excuse me. The next thing is self-love, and I think this is a little bit on conscious parenting. I'm going to go towards a little bit towards Shefali Sabri, who is a writer of conscious parenting. Self-love. I think parents need to love themselves first to be able to reflect that energy of their children. Now, what is loving themselves? And I've done a podcast on it. If you go onto my website, there are all my social handles. I've done a lot of podcasts on self-love and other things. What is self-love? Self-love it's not a very popular concept. It's gaining more popularity now, but self-love often is taken as getting your nails done, getting your hair done, and looking pretty. No, I don't think that's self-love. I think self-love is to be assertive, to set your boundaries, to practice self-care, to pursue your interest in your goals, and to really be able to say no. This is all a concept of self-love. And your children are watching you, right? So let me tell you another story. My son was 6 years old, and one day he came to me, and I was lying down on the couch. It was a beautiful fall evening, and I was lying down on the couch and I was half asleep, exhausted from the weekend. And he came to me. He was 6 years old, and there's nobody else in the house. And he said, "Mom, I want you to come and play with me." And I turned around and told him, I said, "No, beta, I have to. I'm tired and sleepy." And my son turned around and said, "You don't love me." And I had a meltdown. And that was the day I taught him the concept of self-love. I said, "Look, if I step out when I am cranky and I'm not well rested, then I'm going to be snapping at you and I'm going to get angry. So I think first I need to take care of myself before I can take care of you. To give you your 100%, I first need to focus on myself." And I think that's the day I taught him the concept of self-love. So every parent, if you're tired, you need to take a step back. If you're exhausted, you need to take a step back. And you need to explain that to your child, that if you're angry, you can turn around and say, instead of releasing that anger, you turn around and just say, "I need a few minutes," and then your child is going to be able to replicate that behavior. So that is another thing. Be flexible. That's the fourth thing. If you often feel let down by your child's behavior, I think we all have very high expectations of our children. We need to reduce those expectations. And Desi and I were just discussing at the beginning of the webinar that there is a lot of new careers that are coming up. Those were the days when we had doctors and engineers and lawyers. Now, I mean, my son wants to go into the FBI. Who knew? The other day, the girl who does my social media, she is doing a major in digital marketing. There was somebody who was doing the other day I spoke to a child. He was becoming a food expert or something like that. I didn't even know something like that existed. So I think it's very important to be flexible. It's very important to lower your expectations and allow your child to be who they are. They have their passions. We are very rooted in our own notions. So how is it that we're going to step out of the notions and widen our boundaries a little bit and say, all right, our child has a different passion. How are we going to help him make money out of that passion? Maybe I help him understand his why, which is what we do. We help you with self-discovery. When we are going to children, we help them at a very young age to identify their why, to identify their passions, because back in our days, we are waiting for midlife crisis. We are actually waiting till 40, 50 years of age to do what we want to do. Whereas in today's day and age, your children, 10 to 18 or 25, they want to make a difference today. This is one generation that according to research, this generation will not do a job if they're not making a difference. So if that is what their IQ level is, that is what they want to do, then we as parents, it's our responsibility to have different expectations of them, and maybe not have expectations of them, and then just I help them identify their why, help them identify their passion. We have so many of these Generation Z kids who are breaking barriers. I mean, I'm writing a book, and we will talk about that later, just in the interest of time, which has mentioned a whole lot of things that these generations have done. So I think limiting your child and having the same expectations of your child, or unrealistic expectations of your child, which just because we weren't able to achieve something, we want to put that on our child, is again limiting them. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. Understand your limits. Face it, no, we're not a perfect parent at all. We are, I'm sorry, we have our limitations. We have our weaknesses, and I think it's okay to be vulnerable in front of your child. Parenting is a very manageable job. I think we as parents are too hard on ourselves. So to me, I always say, and I did another podcast on this, there's nothing called perfection. There's only called excellence. You're doing the best that you can. So recognize your strengths, be vulnerable in front of your child, accept your weaknesses. That's okay. And be forgiving to yourself. I think once we understand all of these things, parenting becomes a lot easier, and bridging the generational divide gets a lot easier. You're their role model. I always tell parents, don't worry that your children are not listening to you. Worry that your children are watching you. They're like hawks. If you think you're like hawks looking at your child, I think your teens are watching you more carefully than you're watching them. So before you get angry or blow your top or get anxious or sit and watch TV all evening or be on your phone all evening expecting your child to study, I think all of those things need to change. If you want them to behave in a particular way, then we have to be their role models. So I think these are a few things that we need to keep in mind. And once we do all of these things to bridge the generational divide, it's not difficult to inculcate, because these are our values, right? These really are our values. If we take all of this together and inculcate all of these values into our children, there will be you wouldn't need to do any cultural assimilation. Cultural assimilation will happen on it. So what do we do? I think, and this is the three-pronged approach that you can take too, is identify what's bothering them. I think it's very important to build that trust, that communication with your child. And again, if you want to see how to build communication, we will be having a different webinar on that, and you please feel free to attend that on Facebook. What's bothering them is you need to get to the root cause of what's bothering them. Where is the emotion coming from? And then helping them self-reflect. If that emotion is fair, if that emotion is really justified, if what they're feeling, is it all in their heads, or is it because the monkey in their heads is louder their own voice, and then helping them tackle their own goals. So we strongly suggest that you take this three-pronged approach. This is the three-pronged approach that we take. I think we're over the phase where we can put teenagers in a box and say it's only hormones, like they're crazy. Like, No, they're not crazy. Every action has an emotion behind it. So the next time you look at your teenager and say he's going nuts, you have to understand that there is something going on behind their mind. And how is it that you can use our three-pronged approach to break that something down so that you can have an improved relationship with them to draw out their maximum potential. What's our vision? Our vision is to help teenagers develop into confident leaders of tomorrow, and our mission is to bridge the generational divide. How do we do that? Through self-reflection and strategies with parents. We coach parents as well as teenagers. And then we also have sessions together where we bridge the generational divide, because I think a lot of times teenagers and parents struggle to talk to each other because of the generational gap. So that's what we do. They don't need more likes and followers. This is all research based. They need the love and the compassion of flesh and human blood. I mean, they need nobody. They need more than they need you. So we need to take them seriously. We just cannot blame it all on emotions. These are the guys who are going to be creating your future. These are the guys who are going to be your new technicians, your new doctors, your new lawyers, your new digital marketing people, your new FBI, CIA agents. These are the guys who are going to be making a difference. So let's take them seriously. And let's give them the facial time that they need. Let's break those communication barriers. Let's stop putting them in a box. Let's just stop blaming all on their emotions and on their hormones. And we all can do this together. So it's not just hormones. And the first step towards a solution, as we all know, is to understand that your child is fighting this battle alone and you're fighting this battle alone. So there is a bridge in the middle of the two of you. And how is it that we're going to build that bridge so that we as a community, as an Indian community, can come out far stronger than we are in the United States and turn each of our child into a global citizen with our such rich Indian heritage and Indian values. And this is a few of my children who have said this. So go ahead, read at it. They say, we're not too young to have great ideas. Take us seriously. We're not substandard versions of you. These are all my kids. They actually gave me these things and they said this. So let's not blame all of their things to technology addiction. And just because they're on technology, they can do some very amazing things on technology. And they have miraculous possibilities. So let's open the lights, see the light that shines through them, and let's bond with them. Let's connect with them. Let's unite with them, because you are their safe space. You are their security blanket, and you are the person who can bring them together, who can make them into whole individuals, who can make them into who they're meant to be. Thank you so much. My book is coming up very soon. It's called Bridging Generations. I'm hoping to complete it by the end of this year. It's going for its first edit soon. Please stay tuned. I have also put my coordinates in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out with any questions. I also do free consultations. So if you're struggling with anything, we can do a free consultation. You can go and visit my website to schedule a session, or you can send a message to me. My number is there too, and it's also in the chat box. There is also a feedback form with this he's going to send out. I'd sincerely appreciate if you could give me feedback, which will help me draw more content and serve you a little better. And if there are any additional topics that you'd like me to talk out, I'm here to serve you. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Over to you, Desi.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jain. It was so interesting and eye-opening for us. The parents, please post your questions if you have any on the presentation. We can get her to talk to any specifics. Let me start with this. How do you reconcile with the differing moral values, especially as it relates to the relationship that our high schoolers typically enter into?
Can you repeat that question for me, Desi?
How do we reconcile with the differing moral values, especially as it relates to the relationships that our high schoolers are typically entering into?
How do you're breaking up for some reason. Can you just type that question onto the chat to me?
You can see it in your questions tab too, Unnati.
I don't see it. in my questions tab. Okay, let me just.
Yeah, the top.
Maybe I'm not being able to see it. Okay, I don't.
Okay.
I don't see this question. Hold on.
Okay.
1 second. Maybe I need to. Yeah, it's the window's too small, so
yeah.
I don't see the questions.
Make it bigger with the.
I'm trying. Okay, let's try this again.
He's talking about how to reconcile with the moral values between the parent and the child in the high schoolers.
By rationalizing.
By
Rationalizing each value, by giving them the good points and the bad points of that value, by why are you trying to instill that value in them, and how is that value going to benefit them, and how is it that anybody who does not have the value will not have will be looking at the world very differently. So rationalization is going to help you instill that value in them, because if you don't rationalize with them, they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So if you're telling them one particular thing, you have to tell them why. You have to give them stories, you have to give them examples, you have to give them the benefits of those values. That's how you can do it. I hope I answered that question right.
Thank you. And what are your thoughts on parenting after they are adults?
Why am I not being able to see this? I'm sorry, can you read out the next question? They say I'm not able to see it.
What are your thoughts on parenting after they become adults?
And define adults. What is
18,
adults? I mean,
18.
We have to.
It says 18.
I don't think they're 18 at adults. I think, so let's just understand one thing, that the frontal lobe, which is responsible for making decisions, only develops fully at 25. So their decision-making skills are not fully developed up until they're 25. But that being said, at 18, your child, at every stage of at every year of parenting, your parenting style needs to evolve just because the child is evolving. So for instance, a child, when they're the most crucial years of a child's life, when the child is trying to gain independence and trying to find out who they are, is between 16 to 17. 16 to 17, about 17, they learn how to drive. So they're trying to gain their independence. So your parenting style completely needs to change at that. You need to give them independence, but at the same time, you need to create very strict boundaries. So it's not like you have to leave the child alone, but you have to create very strict boundaries, because they've got the car now, they become legal now, and they're going out and driving that car. So as a parent, you need to worry about their safety. So maybe I'm just pointing out a boundary that I did for my own child was, okay, you're allowed to come home, you're allowed to get the car till 10 o'clock at night, and if you're not home at 10 o'clock at night, at any given day, you break your deadline, then your car goes away for a week. So we have to create some very strict boundaries at 17. Now at 18, a child changes completely and he's going to college. And at that point in time, I think your parenting style again needs to be evolved, and the way it needs to evolve is you need to be there when the child needs you, but at the same time let them make mistakes. I think it's very important to allow a college going kid to make mistakes, because if they're not going to make mistakes and we become helicopter parents, it's just very hard to for the child to learn, and the only way they're going to learn is to make mistakes. So that's 18. And then 18, 19, 20, when your child is in college, I think your listening skills need to be great, because that's when you're going to be able to identify what's really going on in a child's life. So you need to listen more than you speak. So when a child calls you from college and they're going blabber, 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 if you're listening to it, you'll be able to process it a little differently and then come back to them with a retort. So that's what you do about 18, 19, 20. I think that's, and then up until 25, they will become looking to you with a lot of decisions. You will feel that your child is not capable of decision making, and you will feel that your child is very flimsy in the decision making process. But that's not because it's your child. That's because the decision making part of the brain is not fully developed. So it's not like your child is indecisive, but it's just that your child needs that time until 25, and after 25 they're able to make better decisions.
Thank you. The next one is
I hope I answered that.
The next one is science versus religion. It's a constant battle. How do we handle this? Needing proof for anything that's asked of them.
I think that's a very political question, and I think again rationalization. It is a very difficult trajectory to go on. But again, science versus religion is it's a very personal based topic. But if you're going to look at, if you want to look at how do we look at research wise, these children are more based on science than they're based on religion. They're very empathetic. They want to make a difference, but they will be leaning more towards science because they believe in rationalization than towards religion. That would be my two-bit worth. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
And I'm only basing this answer on their behavioral characteristics.
Thank you. The next one is, if my teenager is smart and intelligent, how do we guide him? Would want to channel
If
his
my
energy.
teenager is
smart and intelligent, so how to guide him and channel his energy points in the right direction?
By helping him, again, self-reflection. So why don't you have your teenager sit down and identify their strengths? Indian children are very smart. So maybe he's smarter at a younger age. And if that's the case, then sit with him, identify his or her strengths. What are they passionate about? And then you develop your goals based on their strengths. Otherwise, the energy is going to be dissipated. We often want to put our children in everything, right? And that's, but our children want to find their own pathway. So our job as a parent is to put them in multiple things and then help them to allow them to find their pathway. So one of the ways is sit down with their strengths, identify what is it they like, use the process of elimination, what is it that they don't like, and that'll help them set their goals, because they have to understand what they want. They're very smart and they're very intelligent, but they're probably intelligent in one particular field, so, or two particular fields. So we have to identify what is their intelligent or their passions and their smartness really is towards. So once we get their why, then it's be easier to create those goals for them.
We do not see any more questions in the tab. So if you have anything specific or would like clarifications, please let us know.
Absolutely. And if there's anybody who's looking for one-on-one consultation, please feel free to message me or go onto my website. My coordinates are mentioned in the chat. I'm happy to do a free consultation for you at any time. Please feel free to message me.
So it looks like we'll be winding down. You have any final thoughts, Dr. Jain?
No, I think parenting is hard. Just go easy on yourselves, and there's nothing you cannot do. I think your child is looking for you as much as you're looking for your child, and we just need to believe in that and continue to assimilate, continue to put in those Indian values. I would only suggest is when you're giving them an Indian value, just make sure you rationalize with them on why you're giving it. The why is very important.
Thank you.
And may I request everybody to fill out the feedback form? Yeah, that will help me serve you better.
There are a couple more questions popped up.
Sure. I'm here.
One is, how do you approach dating and relationship, especially with kids with the different cultures?
I can tell you, so the one thing that we need to realize with dating and relationship is that a child is exploring. A child is exploring themselves, and no relationship that they're going to form right now is here to stay. I think if we have that at the back of their mind, that they're going through and exploring their personalities, their likes and their dislikes, and the more we stop them, the more they're going to gravitate towards it. So if we as parents look at it as a temporary transition and allow them the freedom while keeping the dialogue open on the good and the bad of the relationship. They will come to us with issues and problems. Whereas if we try and stop them based on culture, then they're going to stay away from us, because right now they're in the defiant mode. So long answer short, be privy to what they are doing rather than pushing them away by telling them this is not the right thing to do. And just keep at the back of your mind that teenagers' relationships are very short-lived. If that gives you any bit of peace of mind, keep that at the back of your mind. Allow them to do what they're doing, but build that trust and respect that they come back and tell you everything. That's how I would answer that question.
So the question is, I have a 16-year-old daughter. I was not raised here, but I'm not aware of the boundaries which can be enforced to keep her safe. Can you guide?
The boundaries to keep her safe, I think one of them is to talk to her very openly about, so I always encourage my parents and my children to talk to their children, give them the correct sex education without making it a taboo topic in the house, giving them a talk on drugs, giving them a talk on their safety, giving them a talk on their culture. I think these are the things that you need to have very open conversations with your girl who's turning 16, because she's as scared as you are, and she's probably taking your fear also. So have those open conversations. And I always tell every child, your parent is your safest space. So it should be a house free of judgment, whereby you tell your child that I'm here for you. You will commit mistakes as you go outside in the world, because you're growing up, and no mistake is going to be more than the love that I have for you. So come back and tell me your mistake. I will help you get out that mistake. Maybe you will have to pay a price for it, because you will have to deal with the consequences, but I'm your safe space, so come back and tell me all about it. I would tell my child that. And the trust and the respect and the open communication is a must, because if you have that open communication with your 16-year-old, she will be more encouraged to come and tell you what are her fears. And then you will be able to solve those fears. So to keep them safe, instead of creating boundaries which are strict, rationalize those boundaries and give her the why to those boundaries. If you give her the why to those boundaries, she would be more keen to keep those boundaries and respect what you're saying to her. I hope that answers.
Thank you. And I have a question of my own too. You being a life coach, did you run into any circumstance in raising your kid where you could not follow your own advice, or if so, what did you do?
If I could not follow mine, of course, I had my emotional moments. There were times when my child comes up to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Nobody is perfect. There is no word is perfect. There's only excellence. I mean, there are times when my child comes to me with a problem, when he's calling me from college and it's a huge problem, and he will turn around and tell me, and I will try and, as a parent, I try and give him solutions, right? That's the first thing that comes to your mind. And he will turn around and say, Mom, I'm not looking for a solution. I'm just here. I'm just looking to vent. Can you just listen to me? So for a minute, I have to take that step back and say, okay, I'm here to not provide a solution. He has to find a solution on his own, but I have to provide that lending ear. So there are times when I go through that, and that's when my child reminds me that I don't want a solution. Mom, you promised me that you're just going to listen to me. Right? So I think that's one of the challenges that sometimes as a parent we face. We're too quick to provide solutions. Solve it. So I don't think, and I think I say this to my mom even today. When I call her up and I tell her a problem, and she just turns around and tries to give me a solution, and then I tell her, I say, Mom, I don't want a solution. I just want you to listen to me. I'll find my solution. I just want you to listen to me. So yeah, that's one of the challenges.
Yeah, that's almost every one of us face that. And also our generation has a tendency that we don't apologize to the kids, but I think we should.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is, again, I'm sorry if I haven't mentioned this before. Apologizing to your kids, being vulnerable in front of your child, saying sorry, and
Admitting you're wrong.
acknowledging when you're wrong,
Yeah.
admitting your own mistake, creating a house which is free of judgment, because I think we're so judgmental sometimes, or comparing. This is another topic which I think should be a completely separate webinar. Is I hear parents say all the time, you don't do this. वो बाजू वाले का बच्चा तो ऐसे करता है, the other guy's kid does it like that. And I say, you can't compare. You have to compare apples to apples. They're two different kids. Because what did you just do? The kid in his head is turning around and saying, well, if you like the neighbor's kid so much, why don't you bring him over? I'm not going to do it anyways. So you did not give any positive reinforcement. We actually gave negative reinforcement by comparing the child. So comparison, judgments, all of these things need to absolutely go out. And being vulnerable in front of your child, saying sorry to your child, acknowledging your mistakes, coming out from your parent pedestal, you have to come down to their level. When people tell me about technology addiction, and I tell them, I said, I said, the first thing that you need to do is really stop nagging them about technology. Have you ever tried to make a TikTok with them? Have you ever tried to sit down with them and play a game with them? Let your inner child come out, because then the child starts looking at you as one of them. And they need to look at you as one of them for them to be able to level with you, for them to be able to listen to you. If you're always going to lecture and always going to tell them what to do, they're going to look at you as a parent.
Yeah, so true.
So
So
yeah,
true.
I hope that answered, Desi.
Oh, yes. At least reinforce that, okay, I'm not being wrong in saying sorry to the kid. Thank you very much. I don't see any more questions coming in. And if you do have anything, please feel free to send us an email or send Dr. Jain an email about what you want to talk about. And then we will be more than willing to help talk to you or help you out. Thank you all for attending this webinar. This was really interesting and informative. And as Dr. mentioned, if you want to have a private consultation, you can fill up your contact info in the feedback form, or you can separately email to me at webinars@northsouth.org. I really want to thank Dr. Unnati Jain for her time and patience with us, as well as educating us on this important topic. We would like to continue talking about this kind of a bridging the gap topic with additional webinars, talks, and this thing. And we need you to participate and help us out in giving us some realistic topics we can approach or talk to. Please do support us with your active participation, and we will try to bring more sessions in this topic as we go along. In about 3 weeks, we are continuing with webinars with a very interesting topic about career guidance. This is by an accomplished business advisor and adjunct faculty of many large universities. This is actually, we want to bring it in to all our volunteers who dedicated their time and efforts to the organization selflessly, and we want to give them back with some kind of a career advice. So please join us, and also any child or the parent who want to advance their career, it should come and listen to him. He's very interesting, right? Please stay tuned for more information. We'll be sending you an email about this, and then do register and attend. Thank you again, Dr. Unnati Jain, and please send me the final presentation as email. I will attach them tomorrow. Absolutely. And then before you leave, please fill in the feedback form. And I would like to see you right back here the next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Desi, and thank you everybody for joining. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.